Jonny Blair. Welcome to Belfast Rail. Johnny, you run a Facebook page, Northern Irish Man in Poland, which today is put the link up on the Facebook page for Belfast Rail. You're a travel writer who's based in Poland, originally from Bangor. You left Bangor in 2003. You've visited over 180 countries across all 7 continents, including Antarctica. And you've worked as a freelance writer, an editor, teacher, and copywriter. And you have a new book coming out on the 12th of September. It's a 3-part volume, and it's called Backpacking Centurion, a Northern Irish Man's Journey Through 100 Countries. And Volume 1, Don't Look Back in Bangor. So thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate taking the time.
Yeah.
I always like to go kind of start from the beginning. How if you just start from growing up in Bangor up until obviously you left in 2003 and started traveling.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, when you grow up in Northern Ireland, you're in quite a small society anyway. You know, you've got your mates and you kind of know people. If you go out, you know, if I would go out in Bangor on a Saturday night, you know, when I was like 17 or 18, the amount of people you'll know is ridiculous, really. So when you start traveling, the amount of people you know in places you've never been is zero. So it's really, it totally changes your idea where, you know, you kind of don't know what people are doing. So I guess growing up in Bangor was great, and you know I'm very proud of Northern Ireland and North Down, Belfast, Bangor, all of that. But of course, there's a little bit of a limitation there within what you can do. You know, there's only so many places you can have an Ulster fry and judge it, and then you want to try a different country or a different city or something a wee bit different from what you grew up. So I guess that was my idea, you know, to see beyond Bangor.
And what got you into traveling? Was it just something that you kind of fell into it? You thought, I wouldn't mind doing more of this, or was it something that you always had a drive in you from young age?
Yeah, you know, to be honest, I link a lot of things in my life back to football, and what it is was I would always have a Panini sticker album for like the World Cup. So in fact, I've got some of them here. I just realised I got them in my on the shelf there. So I started collecting those stickers, you know, like Mexico '86 when Northern Ireland qualified. So to see our players in that was brilliant. But then I started looking at the other teams, going, "Oh, who's that? Iraq, South Korea, Uruguay." And then I thought, I can visit those places. But of course, it's a step by step. You know, you're not 15 years old going, "Oh, I'm going to board a flight to Montevideo." You know, I didn't speak Spanish. I had no idea what was in Montevideo. But certainly from watching the World Cup and watching just different countries, knowing they have a different football shirt, different flag, and it's just fascinating for me just to know that, you know, I'm proud to be from Northern Ireland, but next week we could play Chile in a football match and they'll have their fans with their culture, with their flag, with their food, with their different, you know, outlook on life, with the different climate, and everything was different. So suddenly that Panini sticker album almost turned into a backpacking. Yeah, basically it turned into a backpacking map for me. It was more than footballers kicking a football. It was more like my geography. And then of course, through having Panini, I was educated, you know, by myself to know the capital cities of those countries, to know what color their flag was. You know, it still upsets me when I travel and people don't recognize flags of countries. Like, just watch the Olympics or just watch the World Cup and you'll know what flag represents which country. So yeah, I always knew about that and the language they speak in those countries, which is fascinating. So I guess the short answer to the question would be, yeah, I got most of my travel inspiration from just looking at books and maps and football teams and wanting to be like in South Korea or to be in Brazil, you know. And of course you can make it happen. It's just a step-by-step process, but you can make it happen if that's what you want in life, you know.
And were you studying, were you doing like a degree at the time when you started back in 2003, or?
Yeah, so that's interesting actually, because the qualifications I have built up in life, they don't really match together and they don't really make sense. But the fact that I do my writing and my blogging and my teaching, it kind of amalgamates them all into one because it provides me with that culture. So when I was in Newton Ards Tech, in fact, I was at Beaver Tech in Belfast. I studied journalism there. Which kind of fits with the blogging thing. So I did radio production, and I did media. I was in Belfast Telegraph, and I guess it would have been the BBC Radio. Oh, it would have been Radio Ulster. I was in there for work experience, you know, as a teenager. So I started off doing that, wanting to be like into journalism, and then the whole political thing gets a bit too much, you know, around the time of Good Friday Agreement and all that. I sort of felt, well, I don't want to be just into this, you know, Northern Irish journalism and politics. Maybe a little bit more global is better. So that was the qualification I did in Belfast, and then I ended up in Ards Tech because the only way I could get into university, the journalism course in Belfast wouldn't have got me into university at the time. It was one of those like NVQs. I don't know if you remember those times.
Yeah, National Vocational Qualification or something, wasn't it? Yeah.
Something like that, or a BTEC. I actually, I don't remember the exact name of that qualification. It was good crack, you know. We had a good team there in Belfast learning, and I learned a lot. And there's a bit of politics and history with that as well. But then I ended up in Ards, and the qualification I got in Ards basically sent me to Bournemouth University. So I like seaside towns beginning with B. That is like a running joke. So Bangor, Bournemouth, Belfast, you can argue as well, is seaside without as many beaches. So Bangor, Bournemouth, and then I ended up in Brzeźno in Poland as well. So if it's a beachside town beginning with B, I'll do that for, you know, to see what it's like. So I ended up in Bournemouth, did my degree in Bournemouth, but when I arrived in Bournemouth, the plan was not to stay there. The plan was to see what happened. So I didn't expect to be away from Northern Ireland from that moment and never move back. No, I wouldn't have envisaged that happening in 2003. I'd have thought maybe I'd go away for a while. Maybe I finished the degree back in Belfast, you know, who knew? I certainly had no idea. But when I got to Bournemouth, one of the first jobs I had there was I was selling cheeseburgers by the beach. And there were only about 10 of us working there. But all 10 of those people were from different countries. So that was already, I had my atlas in work. It was like, these are the people that I can go and, oh, you're from Colombia. Oh, I want to go and visit there. And so I think it was step by step for me. It was Bangor, Belfast, Bournemouth, and then that opened up. I guess I have a lot to thank Bournemouth for bringing me that global culture into an English seaside town, and from there, of course, I managed to work a lot in England and get the money that I needed to be a lot more adventurous with travel, because I wouldn't have had that money. I think, you know, when I worked in a pub in Bangor, and I worked in a bank in Belfast before I'd gone to Bournemouth University, so it wasn't it wasn't ideal for me to be a global backpacker and be based in Northern Ireland. It just didn't fit with my lifestyle preference.
And when you were in 2003, when was it that, what was it, like a conscious decision just to go, let's just go and visit somewhere, and then to start from that, or what was your plan before that, or was it just like one holiday that kind of led into another holiday and so on?
I think it was always going to happen. You know, life is quite a lot of fate. You know, you can't predict who you'll meet, but there were little parts of football linked to Bournemouth as well, because I don't know are you a big football fan or not?
Really years ago, but not as much now. More into martial arts and UFC and stuff like that.
Bournemouth has a lot of weird connections with Northern Ireland, which is why I support the Bournemouth football team, AFCB. So George Best's last ever league match in the UK was for Bournemouth. That was in 1983. When Northern Ireland scored their last goal in the World Cup, which was in 1986, it was Colin Clark, and he played for Bournemouth. And in the 90s, we had loads of Northern Irish players that were playing there, like Keith Rowland was there, Neil Masters, and then later Warren Feeney was there. So when I also moved to Bournemouth, the football was a big thing. And I had a season ticket then watching the football team. So it was, when you mentioned it was a trip by trip, it was because at the start, when I was getting my degree, I'd maybe go and do a trip for a week somewhere like in Spain or to France or Germany. And it was little trips at the start because I would still have had my flat. I would have always had a flat in Bournemouth. So I guess the first time I didn't have a flat was 2007, where I basically had my backpack and I just went off and I was hosteling every night. But the first 4 years, I'd say 2003 to 2007, was mostly working, getting a degree, and short trips where I'd probably visited about 35 countries by that point. Yeah, I would say.
Right. And since 2003, you've just been constantly traveling. Then is that right?
This is really hard to actually answer, because if I say I was just constantly traveling, people think that I've never had a flat or I've never rented. But I've lived in Hong Kong, I've lived in Australia, I've lived in Poland, and I've kind of lived in Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan and Montevideo in Uruguay as well, because I was based there. But I was still a backpacker, really. So to be honest, if I said I backpacked in Australia, people would say, no, you didn't. You lived in Australia. So I'm in between the two. I spent about, almost 2 years in Australia, but I only really backpacked for about 2 months of that, because the rest of the time I was working hard there, But that working hard was like, it's a job where, after work I'd have drinks with the staff, and it never felt like a 9-to-5 office job or something. It felt more like a backpacking lifestyle in those days. So I would say since 2003, I've never stayed more than like 12 months in the same flat. I've never stayed more than 5 months in the same city without moving anywhere. So, and that actually was this year. The last 5 months, 2020, is the first time ever that I've never left a city, and that's Warsaw, that I'm in now in Poland. And I haven't left it, obviously, because there's a restriction with coronavirus. So for me, it has been a constant journey. Others might say, well, if you're based in Hong Kong and you got a flat there, it's not backpacking. But, I've got my backpack, and I was away most weekends anyway. If I finished work, I'd be off somewhere. So, yeah, for me, this is the book actually here. I have it. And it's called Backpacking Centurion. So in other words, all of that still feels like backpacking, to me.
And obviously, lockdown, it's pretty much affected everyone globally. What was it like for yourself, who someone who's used it moving about, to be stuck in one spot? And then obviously you had an accident. You were hit by a train. So if you could go, what was that like, to be confined in one spot and then obviously having that accident?
You see, life is a journey. We're here on some type of journey on this planet. And when I heard that, the airports were closed and there was a lockdown, I stayed at home for like 9 to 10 weeks. So I decided to detox myself. So I had no alcohol. I wasn't eating like kebabs or junk food, so to speak. I wasn't drinking as much coffee. I used to be quite a coffee freak in the morning, especially, you know, to waken me up. I started drinking tea more. I changed my lifestyle a bit to be a bit more every day was a little bit more. I would say I had a routine, you know, where I get up and I can live my kind of hermit life, because I wasn't going out. I was going to the shop once a week or once every 2 weeks to do my shopping. So I guess, yeah, that was different for me to have to do that. And because most of my work is online, the work didn't change, you know. I can do teaching online, I can do my marketing online, and all my writing, basically all my writing is online. So, so the work didn't change, but where I did the work changed, because I was only in my flat doing it. So that was, yeah, it was a bit of a lifestyle change. And then as soon as the bars opened again, I had my 10 weeks detox. I thought, well, I can go back out again. And it was nice to be out, you know, whether wearing a mask and having to avoid touching people or going close to people, you know, with the whole elbow, you know, elbow someone instead of shaking their hand, you know. And it was like my third night out after the lockdown thing, and that's when I had my accident. When obviously I drank a bit that night, and I felt a bit dazed. The sun was out, so it was suddenly hot again, and I'd been stuck here, you know, in winter time when the virus started. It was winter here. Yeah. And I had a freak accident, and yeah, luckily I don't look too bad now because I've used a bit of makeup. In fairness, there's that looks better than it is. But yeah, that was this year, so that's a bit more recent. That's like, you know, it's funny that, isn't it? I traveled all around the world, all these countries, all these dangerous, so-called dangerous war zones and all of that. Nothing bad happened, and then I go out for a few drinks after the virus calms down a bit, and I get hit by a train and knocked out. It baffles me, you know. This should have happened in Africa or Afghanistan or Iraq or somewhere, but it didn't. No, it happened in a sensible city on a sensible night.
I suppose that's a good thing. When the accident happened, did you just wake up in the hospital? Was it explained to you, or what happened?
So I was unconscious and not remembering anything for 16 hours. They had all these. I had like different blood samples coming out. I had so many injections and things were happening that I didn't know what was happening, and I hadn't looked in a mirror. So when someone showed me a mirror and I saw my face, I was like, oh, how did that happen? And the police and the ambulance had to come in, and when the police gave me my report, I just looked at it, and it's just, the first sentence was, and it was all in Polish, it was just, you've been hit by a train in Metro Centrum station, which is like one of the biggest metro stations in Warsaw, knocked unconscious, and, you know, lucky that the blood didn't go into my brain, which was that was the biggest worry, really. The blood was just flowing here, which is great, because it didn't go into the brain, you know. So yeah, I woke up in the hospital. I only had 3 days in there. To be honest, it possibly, that accident could have left me in hospital for longer, but 3 days wasn't bad, you know. But they wouldn't let me eat. I wasn't allowed to eat or drink anything, not even water, for the first day. No water, and that's because the doctor said that if you give your body like fluids or food, it affects the brain and the blood. And so I don't know anything about medical stuff. I'm useless at it. So I just said, yeah, that's fine. I trust what you're going to do. And then they came in with the next X-ray, the next head scan, and said, look, you can have a drink of water now. You got the all clear, but we need you to stay in hospital for more injections. And they were giving me this, you know, when you get into your arm, you can't take the antibiotics in a tablet. They have to put it through the arm.
Yes.
Every 4 hours I was dreading it. It was like, but I knew it was helping me, you know, but I just, every time that nurse came in with that big, huge injection thing, I was like, you know, take me home. But I had to be in there for 3 days. It was a tough experience, but came through it.
No, I'm sure that was an experience in itself, just waking up going, where am I, and how did they get here, and but at least I said, as you mentioned, we're fortunate enough to what do you call it, for it to happen in a country with a good healthcare system and all the rest of that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was because look, to be honest, when I travel in Africa, with respect to a lot of those places, like for me, they're different and they're not as advanced medically, and there's more chance of disease. Like I've had more mosquito bites in Africa than anywhere else, and it's a simple fact that if you get ill in, you know, some of the places I've been, like Congo, Rwanda, etc., beautiful countries. I love backpacking around them, but if you spend too long there, your body deteriorates because the food's not the same as what you're used to. The water, you need to make sure you're drinking bottled water, and it it can be tough. So we're kind of blessed that we have a good medical, you know, system in the UK. Of course, NHS is great. Europe is brilliant, you know. So now I know the Polish medical system is fantastic. So I guess countries like Germany, Switzerland will all be up to that level. So if we do get ill on our travels, we have that backup. But if you're in the middle of a jungle in Congo or in Angola or somewhere, it could be difficult out there, I would think.
Um, with all different, you visited over 180 countries. Um, do do you just have a list that you're working through, or do you just, if you're planning to go away somewhere, do you just open up an atlas and go, where have I not been? I'll go and visit that place.
Yeah, this is crazy actually, because when you have an atlas as a kid, you're looking at, you know, you're looking at places, but they're always different when you get there to what you expect. But I don't like to stay in the same place for too long. So I think one thing that I do with my travels is if someone says, oh, they love, like someone says, oh, I love Madrid, right? So I say to them, well, I was in Madrid. I've only been once. I was there for 5 days, and that's enough for me. I don't need, to be honest, I don't actually need or want to go back there. So I like to close doors on places. And the other thing is, if I went back to Madrid, it would be like I would see it in a different way, or I would see it not, you know, with the same images that, you know, imagine that first time, you know, you walk down like Royal Avenue or Donegal Square and you see the City Hall. If you're a Japanese tourist in Belfast, you'll take a photo of the City Hall, right? And it's just, I'm like that everywhere I go. So when I was in like Peru, I saw Machu Picchu, but that was the dream, was to go and do the 4-day hike and then see Machu Picchu, get your photos taken, learn about the history, see it, and get out. I'm not going to go back. I'm not the sort of traveler that repeats. So I guess the 180 idea was easier for me because I don't repeat places unless maybe if there's a football match on, like obviously, yeah, places like France I've been loads of times, Brazil, because I was there for the football. But a lot of those countries will be, you know, maybe just one visit, short visit, could be a week, could be 2 weeks. So for somewhere like Iran, I took a month there. Somewhere like San Marino, I was there for one night, you know. And then the unrecognized countries, which I include in my count, and a lot of people don't, you know, those unrecognized countries, you can visit them in a day or two as well. You know, places like Transnistria, Nagorno-Karabakh, Republic of Egypt, Gorno-Badakhshan, you know, places that are on the map, but nobody actually knows they exist. So, so I guess that, yeah, and there is a list, of course. There's the FIFA list, and then there's the UN list, and then there's the Traveller Century Club list, and then you get into debates about what is a country and what's not. You know, I personally don't class the UK as a country, and I don't care. Some of my friends do. Some of my best friends, where are you from? I'm from the UK. They asked me, I'm not from the UK, I'm from Northern Ireland. What is UK? I don't really see how it's united, right? Because it's like 4 different countries with lots of islands. For me, it's ununited, it's disunited, it's untied. But That's another debate. Yeah, so someone will go to the UK and say they've been to the UK. I'll go to England and then Wales, and Scotland, Northern Ireland, Jersey, and so I go a little bit more individualistic with the culture, I think, than a big country making it into just one country. I think it can be a bit deeper than that, in my opinion.
And then as a writer, if you go and visit a country, I know you've been like to Mongolia and North Korea, which we'll get into in a second. When you go to any country and you're obviously going to write about it, how does that work? How do you plan that, or is it just a natural thing? You're in the capital city, you see a landmark, and then you take a picture and then write about it, or do you have a wee list in your head going, right, I need to get in, I need to check this out, I'll write about this?
Yeah, actually, Jonathan, it's all of those things, not and more. So, like, just to explain it is, if it, like, let's take an example, like, let's say East Timor. Okay, so when I went to East Timor, that was 2014. So I knew in my head that not many bloggers had written about it. Okay, but maybe 2 weeks before that, I think I was in the Philippines. So when I went to Philippines, I simply didn't write as much about it because many bloggers had been there, many articles were written about it. So I was more interested in East Timor for that reason. So yeah, what I would do is I would get to the Philippines and I'd go out for drinks in Manila or Cebu, and I'd write an article, top 5 bars that I saw. And you get loads of people going, oh, you missed this one, you missed that one. And I don't care. These are the top 5 that I saw, and I'm writing about it. I'm telling you about it. You can visit them if you want. You don't have to. So I tend to write things like that on my blog. And then, of course, in East Timor, because there were less articles written about that, if I start writing about that, more people are interested to read those, and they're easier to find on Google. So if you write in like backpacking East Timor, etc., those articles of mine are more likely going to be noticed by marketing people or advertisers, and it brings up the quality of my website. Because to be honest, I don't want to read about the top 5 churches in Rome. I don't want to read about the top 5 cafes in Paris. I'd fall asleep. I wouldn't even visit those top 5. But if it was top 5 in Dili and East Timor, well, if I go to Dili, I'll want to go to those places because, some Northern Irish guy went there and wrote about it and took a selfie having a beer with locals. And it kind of, so I do have a little plan before I go, but the best thing is spontaneous stuff when you're there. You never know what it's like until you're in a place. When you land there, you could just be walking down the street and someone gives you a flyer and it's like, 20% off drinks tonight. And you just go in there and that turns into a new story to write about. It turns into a blog post. So all my blogging stuff, I will say, all of it, no, 90% of it is spontaneous, that happens at the time, and I didn't plan to put that photo up. I didn't plan to write that article, but I had to write that article when I got there because I realized how cool it was and how I needed to tell other people about it, because I wanted other people to do the same thing, or at least to see what I'd done and compare it to what they thought, or something like that.
So it's basically a plan, but not a set in stone plan. You have some kind of natural core, like natural discoveries. If as you said, someone comes to you and goes, "Here's a flyer for a new pub," I'll try out and see how it goes. So it's just like a natural process as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole idea about the book as well. Because when I landed, like, I remember Taiwan was one example, because I had a mate living in Taiwan, right? My mate Millwall Neil. He lived there, and I hadn't seen him for like about a year. So I was like, I'm going to go to Taiwan, right? So, but I booked to go there, but not to leave there. So I got a flight booked in, and then I thought, well, later on I can decide if I want to go somewhere else. So I kind of that's what really started the backpacking Centurion idea, was you just arrive somewhere, but you didn't tell anyone how long you're staying, because you don't know. It it's actually happened that if I booked a flight to leave a place, I later regretted it because I wish I'd stayed longer. I don't think anywhere I wish I'd left quicker. But I think for some places, if I did that, I'd wish I'd stayed longer. So eventually, by about 2010, yeah, probably around the end of 2010, most of my travels were you book your way in, but you don't book your way out, because the journey continues. You know, it's unpredictable.
And and I know, looking at your blog, and I mentioned you visited North Korea. What was that? What was that like? Obviously, everyone hears about North Korea in the news, the whole Kim Jong Un and Donald Trump. Um, what, first of all, what was it like? How hard was it to get booked in to visit there, and what was it like while you were in the country?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fascinating place. And to be honest, I've been to South Korea and North Korea. And if anyone says to me, which would you rather visit? It's always North Korea. At Seoul and Suwon in South Korea, you know, average light, bright cities at night, good food, but a little bit drab and dull. So to contrast Seoul, the capital of South Korea, you know, the capitalist place, if you like, with Pyongyang, absolutely smashing, beautiful city with its piercing skyline, its sunsets, and its calm people. You know, people are very, very calm and quiet, and they kind of get on with their lives there, and you don't really notice any modern. It feels like you're trapped in a time long ago. There's no advertising, you know. There was a pizza shop opened in Pyongyang, you know, I guess in the last 10 years. And before that, they didn't have pizza. So it's, you know, whether that's a good or bad thing, you can judge it. But I was used to, you know, in Bangor we had Piccolo pizza when I was like 8 or 9. So I'd already eaten pizza. If you're from Italy, you know what it is. So to realize that North Korean, you know, 60-year-old guys may never have had, you know, a pizza. They didn't have an Irish pub. There's no Irish pub. There might be now, because I haven't been. Pyongyang was 2013. I was there, so 7 years ago. So they could have changed it, but I guess North Korea is just fascinating. You know, they're very military. All the government is controlling the buildings. They've got their statues of the, you know, great leaders. Kim Il Sung, Kim Jong Il, Kim Jong Un, and it's it's a dictatorship. So you also have to be very respectful of the rules. So you know, by the way, it's one of the cleanest cities in the world, Pyongyang. There's no rubbish on the street. Absolutely not. It's so clean. If you're caught putting rubbish on the street, maybe you go to prison. It's as simple as that. It's a dictatorship which controls the people to the point where the people kind of really support the government, but they also aren't 100% sure of what's happening in the rest of the world. You know, like I remember I was playing pool in North Korea on the Saturday night. We were just in a bar, and there was like 2 North Korean guys playing pool with me. And I will tell you this, like I beat them easily at pool, but I'm really bad at pool. So it was so interesting to me that, and they were asking me about the rules of, you know, if you hit the white ball, and I remember just thinking to myself, they're actually genuinely asking me that. You know, they're interested in it because maybe they didn't play it often, and it was just that contrast from that old school, you know, communist dictatorship that lives today. And yeah, people may not agree with it, but I personally agree with it, because if the people are looked after and the government wants to be like that, it's a fascinating place to visit. And I had a great time there, and I encourage anyone, if they get a chance to to visit North Korea, and we didn't just go to Pyongyang. You know, we were in Kaesong as well. We were in Panmunjom. We crossed the border. Actually, interesting when we went to the border. So it's like do you know about this DMZ, Jonathan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So parallel or something. I think it's called.
Well, what it is, this DMZ, it's not even like Falls Road and Shankill Road. It's like 4 kilometers where it's like almost no man's land. It's 2 kilometers is in South Korea, 2 kilometers is in North Korea, and you're not allowed weapons there. It's called demilitarized zone. But so we went in there, but there was only, on our trip in North Korea, there was me, and there was one guy from Cork, from the Republic of Ireland. So I said to him, just, you know, we were on the bus, I said, did you bring any Guinness with you? And he started laughing at me, and I said, well, I brought some Guinness. And he's coming, are you serious? I said, yeah, I brought some Guinness because I wanted to give the North Korean guys some Guinness. So I think I brought 8 cans or something. So we had 2 North Korean lads, pretty cool guys. They were our tour guides, and you know, so I gave them some of the Guinness, and then I kept maybe 1 or 2 for myself to drink in the hotel room. But then I took 1 can of Guinness to the border between North and South Korea. So I asked our guide if Robert, this Irish guy from Cork, and I could have a Guinness together at the North-South divide, you know, shaking the hand type of thing. And he said, we'll have to check with the security guard for that. And then, of course, I said, we're just going to have a drink. And he said, yeah, it'll be fine. So we just got a Guinness, and I think there's a video of it, there's at least some photos. We just sat and kind of did that. It was quite a peaceful moment, you know, just to have a Guinness on the border, because we were looking into South Korea, but we were standing on the north side, and the hut just down from that was like, you could see the border there and the guards and things like that. So overall, great journey there, and well recommended, and also something that, of course, I was writing about it at the time. I was blogging a bit about that. Yeah,
I'm sure that's not everyone can say they did that there. That's a pretty good story. And I take it, what do you call it? Did you fly into China then into Pyongyang, or were you able to fly directly into Pyongyang?
So I get a bit selfish with my journeys because I want them to be exactly how I want them. So I wanted to see the airport in Pyongyang, but I also wanted to see the land border. So I flew in to Pyongyang airport, and then we got the train out to China. So I wanted to do both. Most people like to fly in and fly out, or train in and train out. So I flew into Pyongyang because I was really curious about the security and the airport and things like that. And it was quite a small airport, to be honest. It's smaller. In my opinion, it was smaller than the George Best Airport, just from memory. Now, I could be wrong there, because there might be airport experts out there going, no, it's bigger. But the wee waiting room and the wee, you know, the conveyor belt thing, like, for sure that's smaller than both the Belfast airports. And it was just like a passport stamp, because we got our visa the day before in China. We got them in Beijing, and then we got the Pyongyang flight. And then, yeah, coming out, we actually had a bit of a party train. So we started in Pyongyang, and we were on a train to Dandong in China. But on the way, you know, a few Chinese guys had come in and bought in like a few packs of beer, things like that. So we're kind of having a beer and some really bad quality Chinese food on that train. Someone was playing music. So it all felt a bit surreal there, you know, just crossing that border out back into China. So yeah, it was a crazy journey, really.
If this is probably a question you may not want to answer, but what would be if there was, what would be the worst country, the most difficult country you visited, and what would be one of your favorites, if you have a favorite?
The worst and the most difficult, I've always said this, and it will probably never change, is Venezuela. Okay. So I don't ever want to go there again. I don't like the country. I met a few cool people there, I had some decent food, and I went to a few bars and things like that. Saw some of the sights in, central Caracas, but actually, I was there at the time of the black market crash, 2011. Such bad timing. I think I crossed the border, and basically, I was treated. I just felt. I thought I was going to die. I thought the police were going to take me away and shoot me or something. Like every policeman at that border, they were coming, because I went to Colombia, Venezuela by land. They were coming with guns. They were checking everything of me. I thought they were just going to steal everything. And I was just lucky that there was a guy with me. We'd got like a shared taxi across the border. There was a guy there that really helped me out with the Spanish translation and trying to say to these policemen, I'm just a backpacker. I'm not a drug smuggler. They had probably looked at me and thought I look a bit, I think I hadn't shaved for a couple of weeks, and I'd looked a bit scruffy. They maybe thought I was bringing drugs in or something. And I guess it was the wrong time to go into that country. And I had planned to see the waterfall in Salto Angel, which I missed because I couldn't be bothered. I planned to go to, they've got the world's biggest ice cream shop is in Venezuela. It's in Merida. So one of my plans was, I actually had 3 things I wanted to do in Venezuela. I wanted to watch baseball live because it's their national sport. I wanted to have the ice cream, and I wanted to see the waterfall. I did none of those because I just didn't like the place. So, but somebody from Northern Ireland might go to Venezuela next week and say it's beautiful, it's brilliant. It could be, but I didn't see that beauty. So I closed the door on it. Good night.
Yeah. And what would be? Do you have a favorite country that you like?
Yeah, but of course I say Northern Ireland every time I'm asked that. Yeah, it's funny because it's always foreigners that ask me that. It's like it could be a Polish person or a Slovakian or a Russian to say, "Oh, what's your favorite country?" Northern Ireland. And then they then ask me, "Oh, another one. Choose another one then," because they didn't expect that I would choose my home country. And sometimes people say, if Northern Ireland's your favorite, why don't you live there? And I said to them, I've spent more than 50% of my life living there. So I clearly have lived there, for over 20 years. So I wanted to see a bit of everywhere else as well. So yeah, of course, Northern Ireland's my favourite. It will always be. But aside from that, I'm also quite a fan of England. I think it's I got a lot of good English friends. It's a good system. It's diverse. It's a bit raw. But I like Poland, Iran, Mexico, Uruguay. I get a lot of places that I put on a list. I like China as well, to be honest. I was always a big fan of backpacking in China because you get lost. You just put your backpack on. You can't speak the language. You can't read things. You get to a train station, you can't read anything, and you're really struggling to know where you're going. And it was.
Sorry, hello?
Did it cut out there?
Yeah, sorry, I cut out there. Apologies.
Okay.
You were talking about China?
Yeah. Well, that's okay. We'll catch it back up. So I was in I've been to China like 20 times, but obviously now China's getting bad press because of the virus, and I have to admit they're not exactly hygienic in those markets. I've been in a lot of those markets, and I've eaten some food which looking back, probably I shouldn't have done that. But this type of food, you're eating like pieces of a chicken. It could be a piece of a bat or a rat, and they cook a lot of that stuff. But for diversity of culture, China, yeah, you're just traveling on your own, and you look different. If I look like this, the local people see me and think, oh, he can't be Chinese. What is he doing here? And then they come and talk to you. They'll invite you for a cup of tea. They'll always give you some chicken and rice. It's really, it's typical cup of tea, chicken and rice, and that's China. And, you can see such beauty there. You can go to a beach, you can go to the mountains, you can go to these old villages and watch dancing. It's just unbelievably diverse. And yeah, it's changing. And now there's Wi-Fi cafes in the middle of of the mountains, etc. Which when I was backpacking there, certainly, well, you wouldn't have had a smartphone in those days, but you wouldn't have had internet for days in those villages that I was in. Like, no chance. They wouldn't even have known what internet was. A lot of them.
And has China changed much then since when you first went to where it is now? I know obviously there's a big push there to modernize the country and make it more competitive with like South America, Japan, South Korea, etc.
Yeah, I think that everywhere's changing, really. And the first time I was in China was 2007, and not I haven't actually been back for a few years to China, but Shanghai, Chongqing, Shenzhen, those big cities, it's full of businessmen in Wi-Fi cafes with their laptops out now, and that is a big change because it certainly wasn't that before. I have to say I don't like companies like Starbucks, etc. But unfortunately, those big chains are now everywhere in China, and that ruins it for me. Yeah, you can keep your Starbucks United States. I don't need to see it in China. I'd rather have a Chinese, little tea house on the corner. So I guess it's got an influx of globalization and the money. Of course, money is good for society. There's no doubt. It can build up the infrastructure, but not from Starbucks, please. Sell something else. Sell some Mexican food, or open up an Italian coffee place, for example, which is better coffee than Starbucks. But
no, I definitely agree. My wife, she's from Poland, and
okay.
when we first went over, she took me to see. She lives in Oswestry. People probably know that as who are not from Poland would probably know that as Auschwitz. Oswestry, the city, as you know. We would go to take me in the Krakow. I remember when we first went there, it was like all the Polish coffee shops, and you're starting to what you just said there. You're seeing Costa now, you're seeing Starbucks, and it's great, obviously, because it provides jobs. But I do agree. I think if you're going somewhere else, a different country, it's nice to kind of eat or drink in restaurants or cafes are unique to those places to get a different perspective.
Yeah, and to be honest, it ruins travel for me. And here's a little example: would be like cities like Vienna, Berlin, Rome, etc. They're all great cities. They're fantastic. They got a lot of culture, a lot of history, nice buildings, cool people. But once you get to a main square in a city like that, and you see a McDonald's next to a Starbucks next to, I don't know, I can't even think of an example. But once you start to see these change, I kind of don't take photos of that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Sorry, I think we've got a connection problem.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. You were
okay,
saying like not taking photos of certain things because obviously
Yeah, I try to show, like you said about the local places in Krakow, for example. Yeah, they're much cooler, and I also think that you should be giving your money. You should be giving your money to the local people, rather than because if you buy something in Bangor, that is from an American company, part of me is thinking, well, some of that money is not going to stay in Bangor, and a place like Bangor, the seafront. Queen's Parade, that street. Unfortunately, it hasn't been the same since the 1980s, when we had the beach and things like that, because all those businesses had to close. And then you'll have KFC coming in saying, yeah, but we got KFC on the corner and things like that. But it's not the same. The glory days have passed when the commercialism took a lot of the profit and took it out of the country,
Is there a place in the world where you hope doesn't change or kind of stays the same? Is there like a wee particular spot that you like to protect if you could?
That's interesting because I guess I want most places to stay like roughly the same, but just trying to think of a place that I don't want it to change at all. It'd be too obvious to say, but I can't say Belfast because I quite like the idea that Belfast is new restaurants and things opening. So I can't say Belfast. Oh, you've got me on a tough one there. Oh yeah, no, there is. I've got it then. It's Machu Picchu. It's the really historical places. So Machu Picchu in Peru. I don't want to see a coffee shop opening there, like for example. It's great to see that beautiful place. Places like the Vatican City is perfect as it is. Let it be there and don't change it. So I think the traditional and the pyramids of Egypt. So I went to the pyramids, Giza, and there's actually a Pizza Hut, like right opposite it. This is probably another article I could write about complaining about things. I tend to be more positive on my blog, but I didn't like the idea that there was a Pizza Hut opposite the pyramids. But this was interesting because I had a driver coming to meet me, and the English and my Egyptian wasn't matching, and he said, "Just meet me at the Pizza Hut." And it was, it was the easiest place to meet. And I was like, "I don't want to meet you at the Pizza Hut. No, we'll meet at the Pizza Hut then." And it actually worked because it can be, if it's busy at the pyramids, you need a place where you might meet someone. But the Pizza Hut is actually, the door is opposite the door to the pyramids where you pay in. Which Egyptians probably don't even really eat that much pizza, I guess. So it's funny for me.
So you obviously have a blog which we mentioned at the start. Don't Stop Living. How did that come about, and what inspired you with the name of that?
Yeah, so this is I've told this a few times, maybe in a pub to friends, or I've told it on the blog possibly, But what happened was I was always a writer, like my whole life. I remember just writing in a diary, even as a teenager. I would just write things about what I was doing. And when I was traveling, I was also doing that. But nobody was reading it apart from me. So I'd write in my wee book every night. In fact, I've got some of those books here. There they are. You just kind of each night you just take a book, like there's one, and you just write what you do that day. And I've got these for 10 years. Every night I would sit there and I'd write, what did I eat? What did I drink? What churches, museums? How much was it for a train? How much was it for a bus? How much was the food? Anything unusual? I'd write it all on a piece of paper in the wee book. And those days, they built up. I had quite a lot of those wee books. And then I was in Toronto 2007. And Toronto is a really significant city for me, even though the city itself doesn't blow my mind, but it's a significant city for me. And that's because my blog started there and the name comes from there. So both of those things happened in Toronto. So I'll just tell you a wee bit of the story of the blog. So Don't Stop Living actually I think it's a fantastic phrase for life, just like don't stop living. Anyone can use that. But I didn't make that up. I stole it. So this is what happened. I was walking in a place in Toronto between Wellesley Street and Yonge Street somewhere, and there was a high school just on the corner, and I just looked over and someone had written in red graffiti, "Don't Stop Living." They had written that there, and I said, "That's pretty good. I'll write that down." So I wrote it down, but of course I wouldn't have needed to write it down because I'd never forget it. I went, that is my motto. That I've been waiting for that one. So it was like I wrote it down, and then it was 6 years later I was back in Toronto, and I was writing again. I was in Toronto writing in my diary, having a beer down by Lake Ontario. I was with a backpacking mate, Lee Price. He was staying in the same hostel as me. We were just backpacking around the city together, and I started writing in a book. And Lee started looking at me as if, "What are you doing? Why are you writing in a book? We're out having a beer here." And I said, "Oh, don't worry, Lee. I'll put it away in a minute. I just write down how much it was, and then I put it away." And that's it. And he says, "Oh, but why don't you do that in a travel blog?" And I sort of looked at him. "What's a travel blog?" I didn't have a clue what it was. That was 2007. And then he had his own travel blog, you see, Lee. So he showed me his travel blog in the hostel on the internet there. And every day he'd been doing the same as me, but I'd been doing it online with his photos. So then I just said, well, tomorrow I'm going to work out how to do that, and I'm going to convert everything from this wee book onto the internet, and I'll add my photos to it, and I'll be able to send it to my mum or, you know, my family and friends and say, hey, instead of emailing me every day to ask me what I've done, I'm just going to write about it, and then you can read it. So it all started, that's how it all started. Don't Stop Living was my phrase that was taken from a wall in Toronto about living a life of adventure, and it was all about live life to the full, and you know, there's no need to stop anything. Just keep going and learn more and experience more every day. You know,
I think that's a really great phrase or saying, because I think it's the episode I just uploaded, the recently, episode 4 with Anthony Summers. That was something he kind of talked about, working in a very dead end job, and there's these older gentlemen sitting there in the staff room saying about how long they'd been there, and he thought to himself, that's going to be me if I don't get out of here. So I think it's a great thing, and I think it ties in really well with obviously what you're doing, exploring and traveling about. So then obviously the book, and I know you finished writing it in 2015, isn't that right?
yeah.
Book there, yeah. Backpacking Centurion. Why was there? If you don't mind me asking, why was there a delay in the book being finished in 2015 to it being released this year?
Yeah, I think I can only blame myself for that. You know, it was first of all, I wasn't good at organizing. Like, I'm excellent at writing. I could write and write and write, but then to edit that and to organize that into a book and to find a company to print it and all that was difficult. But because I'd visited 100 countries, you know, in 2015. It was more than that. But in 2015, the idea was just release a book on 100 countries and that's it. And that's my book and that's everything. But when I looked back at that book, I showed it to a few publishers, and they said, you can't put that in one book. It's too big. The book is there was 147 chapters. So I cut 47 chapters out, which will be edited properly and at some point. So the first book, the first volume, has 35 chapters instead of 100. The second volume has the next 35, and then the next 30 to make it up. So it's 100 chapters, 100 countries, but in 3 volumes. So partly the delay was due to my bad organization. Partly it was due to, of course, the book being too big or outdated. And then the third reason is I fell into really bad depression, and I wasn't the same person that I was, you know, around 2016, 2017, I wasn't in the right mood to release that. In fact, I thought I'd never release it, to be honest. It's a little bit magical that it finally is here, but it could have been lost in the dustbin of history, you know.
And what do you call it? But the whole editing the book and getting the book ready, has it been a difficult process in getting it to print, or was it pretty straightforward?
You know what? The weird thing is, after all that hassle, it was actually easy to do it, but that was because I already had the material. You know, it's like saying to, you know, Paul Gascoigne, put on your football boots and go and play. Because if you're good at something and you know you're good at it, the easiest thing is to do it. The hardest thing is the consequences of doing it. So the writing was easy, and then I guess the next hard bit will be actually getting feedback on it. And you know, it's possible that the feedback can be difficult because people, they like to judge, they like to criticize. And you know, being a blogger, I'm used to that. I get good comments, bad comments, all sorts of people. And so, you know, this journey is not over. It's just a book, and it's going to be available. And you know, for Northern Irish people, it's more. I think it's probably more interesting because I kind of track my journey from the whole, you know, Belfast, growing up in Bangor and Belfast, and then, you know, heading out. So all of that together, there's a book, and you know, if people want to read it, they can read that and look at my journey. And I don't know, well, we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. And the title, Backpacking Centurion and Don't Look Back, what was this sort of? So Don't Look Back at Bangor, or Don't Look,
Don't Look Back in Bangor, yeah.
Yeah. Where those two come from? Where do you get the idea for them? Or
yeah, they you know, they've also been in my mind for years. I think I've been hiding all these like little, you know, phrases in my mind for years. Backpacking Centurion, I was always going to call the book that, but it started with, I don't know if when you were a student, there was this game called Centurion. Do you ever remember that?
No, I don't. Sorry, no.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just my English mates that were into it. I don't remember doing it so much in Northern Ireland, but it was basically, you just had a few mates, right? And you got loads of beer, and it was just a shot of beer, right?
Okay.
But you had to do 100. Now, it sounds easy because it's only a shot of beer. It's not vodka, it's only beer. But you had, the rule is you have to do 100 and then you're a centurion. So we called it Centurion. But when I started traveling, then I had my backpack and I was drinking, you know, I like to try the beers in each country. So I kind of linked it all in. I was like 100 countries, drinking, backpacking Centurion. But I actually had to Google it. I had to make sure that no one else had that title, because if there'd been a book by someone called that, I'd have been like, oh, I can't do it then. It's because I wouldn't want to take someone else's you know, book title. It's okay taking a phrase from a high school wall, in fairness, but not a book title. So yeah, that was my book title. And then the volumes are separate. So volume 1 relates only to the Bangor kind of, you know, Don't Look Back in Bangor. Obviously it's, you know, for those that know Oasis, it's Noel Gallagher has a song, Don't Look Back in Anger, I heard you say. So I've just changed it to Bangor, because I don't look back in Bangor, because I left it, and I'm not really, you know, I'm not looking back at that life. As much as I loved my time there, I don't dwell on it. I move on, and it's like a closing of that chapter. That's really what it is.
Excellent. And you, obviously, this is how I came across you. You have a Facebook page called Northern Irishman in Poland. What attracted you to Poland, and do you see yourself settling in Poland?
Yeah, I never ever said I would see myself settling anywhere until you've got something a bit more concrete, like a wife and kids, which I don't. So I don't have wife and kids. I don't even have a car, to be honest. I just rent a flat. So I think, yeah, I would be free to move around again if I wanted. But look, Northern Irishman in Poland was a culmination of a few things. So Don't Stop Living started 2007, and I'd been through a 5-year relationship and split up, and it was well documented. You know, people that followed Don't Stop Living blog, they know who that lady is. They saw that I traveled around the world with her, visited every continent with that girl, and that relationship ended in 2015, which is actually the same time I finished the book, roughly. So when that had finished, I was a bit lost, and I was backpacking in Central Asia. So I kind of I went Kazakhstan, into, you know, I was in Kyrgyzstan, Karakorum, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan. I was traveling around there, loving it again, but I was single. I was back single, and I wanted to stay in Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan and live there. I felt I could settle there. I liked the city. I had friends there. But eventually, I came back to Europe to watch football, actually. So it was kind of Northern Ireland were in the Euros 2016. So obviously I wanted to be back for that. But I was also in Belfast for the Belarus match before that. So I came back to Europe, and I then realized, now I'm closing the door on Asia. I'm not going to live there, because I had 5 years, in and out of China, Hong Kong, and, backpacking all around Asia. And I think when I looked at my map, I only had like 3 or 4 countries in mainland Asia that I hadn't been to. So I decided to close the door on living there. And Poland was a real kind of an oddball. It wasn't, I had no plan to live in Poland, actually, absolutely zero. But after the Euros 2016, I just put my backpack on and went backpack, and ended up in Belgium. Didn't settle. Netherlands didn't settle. And then I always had Polish friends, was the thing. When I worked in Bournemouth, the amount of Polish people I worked with was, you're talking about hundreds here. And some of them were my best friends, and it was, but I'd forgotten, I had actually, they won't mind me saying, I'd forgotten a bit about them, and I'd forgotten a bit about Poland, because I'd only been back to Poland, I think, once since 2007, and that was to Poznan and Krakow. So I ended up back in Poland in 2016, and I was in Gdansk. Have you been to Gdansk?
No, we haven't been to North. My wife's talked about going next time we get over. That's
Yeah.
one of the northern ports, isn't it?
Yeah, Gdansk is totally recommended. I love it. And to be honest, if you go there, you can fall in love with that city. I was in Gdansk for about 3 days. I was sitting in a cafe. I had my laptop out. I was doing some edits on my book. I had friends inviting me to different places. And I remember doing a few tours and writing about them on Don't Stop Living. And a few people read them. And then I thought, well, why don't I write about Poland? Because I'm kind of in Poland, and I like it here. And I'd never had such a small niche in my writing. It had always been Northern Irish tourist. That was my only niche. I'm a guy from Northern Ireland, and I'm in Taiwan, now I'm in Uruguay, now I'm in Bolivia. That was that niche. And it felt now that I was a bit older, and I'd been through that relationship breakup. I needed to live in Europe for a start, because my family's in Europe and my friends are in Europe. So that there's one day in Gdansk, just sitting having a cup of coffee, looking outside and thinking, yeah, I'll make this. This will be my home here. So I then went and looked for flats in Gdansk, and I found, this is another true story. I found a flat in the place called Brzeźno, which begins with B. So it's another beach, and I was 5 minutes from the beach. I had a Wi-Fi cafe, a bar there, and it felt like home. And within 6 months, Don't Stop Living was still around, but I just brought a new blog out, Northern Irishman in Poland, and I didn't even expect to. I think I made that as a joke, actually, to be honest, because I had no idea what inspired that. No, absolutely no idea, because but it's great, because it gives me a more of an identity and a different market of people to be involved with and to meet, and to try and amalgamate goodwill between countries, because there's a lot of hatred in the world, and it's nice to have a foreign guy living somewhere that actually cares a bit about the people. And because I would want people in Northern Ireland, like if there's a Lithuanian in Northern Ireland, I would want her to love it, and I would want her to write about it, and I would read anything like that. So for me, yeah, I like being an immigrant. I like being the outcast. And if I was in Bangor, I don't think Northern Irishman in Northern Ireland would be quite a decent market. I think about 2 people would read that.
And what's some of your top likes of life in Poland?
It's got to be the people. I think some of my Polish friends, they got such a same sense of humor as me. It's the calmness of life. There's no pressure. People don't. I lived in London for a year as well, which I don't often talk about, because I didn't like the the London fast-paced city life. It's not for me, you know. I like the calmness, but I like progression in a more like localized way. So Poland is really good at that. There's a really great street in Warsaw called Zamkowska Street, and there's all these little cafes and bars that are all locally owned. They've all got something different. You know, you might have live music on a Friday night, poetry readings, and you get a good mix of Polish people and foreigners coming in, and it's just that progressive part of Poland that I like, that is not too capitalist in its progression. It's not like, oh, let's open up all these global chains. It's more like, let the local people have their nice business. And so I do support a lot of Polish business. Unfortunately, there's not the opportunity to buy like Tato or things like that here, you know, which in fairness, when I'm in Northern Ireland, I go overboard on it. So I do buy my soda bread and things like that when I'm back. But here, I'm living in a bubble away from Mr. Tato, you know.
Taste of home.
Exactly, yeah.
And what obviously you've got the book coming out in September, and then there's obviously going to be a volume 2 and a volume 3. What's your plans thereafter? Are you going to further the blog a bit more, or will you be doing a few other books?
Yeah, I think my plan is still to travel again, but I had the idea to visit 200 countries, something like that, because then it completes some kind of a jigsaw, and I think I've got about 14 like places that I could call a country to go to make it there, or about maybe 30 left that would be, you know, genuine countries on most lists. So if travel opens up again with the coronavirus easing, there are 2 parts of the world that I've really neglected. One is Caribbean. Like all those countries I've traveled around, I've been to every country in mainland America, from Canada down to Chile. But the Caribbean, I've only ever been to Trinidad and Tobago, and that's it. So all those other real countries like Cuba, you know, Barbados, St. Kitts and Nevis, haven't been to them. So I guess one of my dreams might be to do like a Caribbean month or something, and visit every country in that month, to go to all of them. And then the other part of the world I haven't really been to is like the Pacific Ocean, the southern part. So I've traveled to like Nauru, Kiribati, Marshall Islands in the north of Pacific, but the south bit, like Vanuatu and Polynesia, French Caledonia, Niue, I haven't been to any of those. So I do look at gaps on my map. So those 2 I'd want to fill in, but if it's not possible due to the virus, we have to live with that and deal with it, because you know, people's health is more important than me writing about the best bars in the middle of the Pacific Islands, you know.
And for someone like yourself, somebody extensively travelled, what would be some of the advice you would give to somebody maybe wanting to maybe follow in your footsteps, or even become a travel writer themselves? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, so let's start with the traveler first before the writer bit. But if you just want to be a traveler, the most important thing is that you're working hard and you're not wasting the money. Like, just, you know, in fairness, I've actually wasted quite a lot of money on football and beer, but when you look back, I could almost say it's not wasted, because it was part of building up my journey. So I would say, if you're spending a lot of money on ridiculous things, think of how much a flight to another country is, and think of how much it is to sleep in a tent or sleep in a cheap hostel for a night. And when you look at the money, you can spend your money a lot more wisely. You know, if I hadn't traveled around the world, I'd probably be able to buy a house or something. So I've wasted my money on travel, but the word waste is is it waste, or is it, is it taste? Then is it what I wanted? But so the most important there, they got to work hard, work in bulk. It doesn't matter what job, because lowest paid jobs, you can still make a lot of money there if you're savvy and you're good with money. And when you start traveling, also be cheap with things. Like, so we're not talking about get the most expensive backpack or stay in a 3-star hotel. We're talking 1-star hotels, hostels, cheap backpacks, sharing rooms, sharing food, using the same bottle of water 10 days in a row by filling it up from the tap. All little tricks that just make travel cheaper, because I've always been a cheap guy. I don't sit and drink champagne on the 12th floor balcony of a 5-star or something, even if that could be a good dream. I'd rather have a dingy, half pint of local ale, on a street corner with old people smoking in front of me or something, because it kind of like, it's the cheaper and more localized way to do it. So yes, with money is an important one to stay focused and to save. And another thing is to don't copy other people when you travel. So don't say, oh, everyone went to Thailand, oh, that your photos look great, I want to go to Thailand. Well, when people started showing me photos of Thailand, I thought, well, I'd rather go to Taiwan then, or to Singapore, or East Timor, or Papua New Guinea. So I don't like to copy people that are too mainstream. There's a lot of mainstream stuff going on, and I'm kind of against it.
So get off the beaten path, basically.
Yeah, but sometimes this path that's beaten is good. Like I took my mates, to Temple Bar in Dublin to have a pint of Guinness, right? Now, it's so cliched. I mean, but they hadn't been there. So what can I do? Imagine them going back and go, oh, I went all the way to Dublin, didn't see Temple Bar. It's quite nice. It's quite a decent, cultural idea. Or you went to Northern Ireland and you didn't go to the Giant's Causeway. So some of the mainstream things, yeah, you have to keep them in there. But I'm quite against the whole only mainstream, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So the guy that visited Ireland flew into Dublin, got a train to Belfast, did a tour of the Shankill and the Falls murals, went to Giant's Causeway, had a shot of Bushmills, and then flew out. So stereotypical, great to have him on the island, but can you just like spend a day in Ballyhalbert or something? Go somewhere a wee bit different, or the Silent Valley. I love to see images and stories from people that maybe visited like Northern Ireland but spent a whole week in Omagh. It's more interesting than they spent a whole week in Portrush to me. So I did the same when I traveled. So probably I've been to some countries and skipped what people might consider the coolest thing they thought was there. I might have skipped it just because I didn't want to be that mainstream buck Egypt, if you know what I mean. So
yeah. And then what advice would you give if somebody wants to become a travel writer like yourself?
Yeah, it's all going to start from blogging these days. If you want to make a career out of that, you have to start as a blogger. Now, travel blogs, those that are into their travel blogs, they know that travel blogs make money now. Travel blogs make money through sponsored posts, through marketing, through advertising, through affiliates. So even though I always class myself as a writer and a travel writer, every single word that I write doesn't make me money. It doesn't happen like that. I write and I blog. Some of that is for free. Some of that is for fun. Some of it I've been paid to write it. Some of it I secured a contract to do a writing gig. So if you're passionate about writing, yeah, write about it and write a lot and engage with readers. And to be honest, if you want to be a good writer and you're not good on social media, it can be difficult these days because social media is huge now. So I want to be on everything. I want to be on Facebook, YouTube. I don't want to have, a social media where I'm totally neglecting it, because there's a slight audience, even like with Twitter, you might get people that follow me on Twitter or Instagram, but they don't use Facebook. So I think with the writing, be yourself, be honest about things. Don't say, like, because I've criticized, like, for example, the Eiffel Tower. It's crap, it's boring, I don't like it, I'm not interested in the Eiffel Tower. But what you get is, you get most travel bloggers going, wow, here I am today at the Eiffel Tower, here's a selfie. And I'm sort of looking at it going, it's just a tower. We've got one in Newton Ards, it's called Scrabbatar, and it's nicer, So I guess I'm a bit cynical with that. But so if you are going to write honestly about what you saw and your opinion of places, and make it fun, just make it yourself, and try to be different from other people. It can be boring if you're too similar to other bloggers,
So just try and be original.
And stand out a little bit. If you can stand out a bit, I think, because there's an Indian girl that lives in Poland, and obviously there are a lot of Indians around the world, and there are also a lot of Indians in Poland, but she's got a blog called Indian Girl in Poland. So she already stands out, because if there's an Indian girl coming to Poland and they want some advice or information, they can just write to her, And that's another thing you need to be, is you need to be open and responsive. You imagine a blogger that doesn't respond or thank people or like people that follow them. Well, you've got to like these people, I want to meet people through my blog. The amount of people I've met has been ridiculous, that I've met these people through the internet, or they say, we've got a function next week, you want to come to that, or you should come to my bar and try the steak, and write about it. So it opens up a new world. If you start a blog today, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. You never know where that will take you. I had no idea I'd be sitting here 13 years after Don't Stop Living was released, that people are actually reading it and have been reading it for all that time. I'm shocked by it, but that's the life that we live in.
Probably, I know we've touched on different like countries that we're too fond of, and countries you are. What would be your top 5 travel destinations you'd recommend people once the whole COVID-19 goes away and the whole lockdown eases and they're able to travel again? What would be your top 5 destinations?
That's really good. That's a good question. Because so I'm gonna, like, Northern Ireland has to be in it, right? But so I'm gonna kind of put them in as like a place. So Northern Ireland, I'm gonna give them, these people get a week. So they've got 5 destinations, 5 weeks. You get a week in Northern Ireland, and while you're there, you've got to go to like the Tato factory and Giant's Causeway and Bushmills. Do your cliched stuff, but just go and seriously sit on a beach or do something a bit different. So obviously Northern Ireland would be one. China, spend a week in China, be safe. Maybe go to Chongqing and go down the Yangtze River, or spend a few days in Kunming, down in the south of China near the Yunnan, in the Yunnan region is really nice. So I give them a week in China. These 5 destinations, they need to have a week in Mexico, because it's probably the best food variety. Like, Mexico City is unbelievable. I just love that city. So yeah, in Mexico, I would spend a week there and do the food tours, the tequila and mezcal tasting, and get part of the atmosphere and get to places like Oaxaca, little villages that are, well, it's actually a city, a little bit more Mexican than your Mexican restaurant in London or something. So stick Mexico in there. I live in Poland, so I'm going to promote Poland, but not just come to Krakow and Warszawa. No, get out of these places. So spend at least a few days in the north coast. So go to like a place like Łeba or Międzyzdroje or Wejherowo. Get a bit of city life, inside the smaller cities. So we're talking like places like Lublin, Białystok, Elbląg, Starogard. These are like cities that I visited that are not so common, and do the death camp for when the Germans and Nazis were unfortunately controlling. So get your history fix in Poland. And I've got one more I can pick. We'll have to go to Africa then. So want these guys to really get into some African place. Let me think. I would send them to Ethiopia. Yeah, Ethiopia. Let's just pick that one. Little crazy country, amazing people, the friendliness of the people, even in the capital, Addis Ababa, mad for traffic, absolutely crazy city, but cool people. Good food as well, surprisingly, Ethiopia. And a lot of different things to do. You got sunken churches in Lalibela. You got Danakil Depression in the north, and then in the southeast, you can feed hyenas mouth to mouth, which is actually, I've got the photo of that on the front of my book when I fed the hyenas. That's actually in Ethiopia. So the hyena comes right up. So I'd throw Ethiopia in there, but of course we've got to be mindful that those are just 5 countries. You could ask me on a different day, and I might stick 5 different ones in. So at the moment I would go to those 5. Yeah.
And what in your whole time being away and traveling, visiting all the various different countries, what would be your, name a few, or what would be one of the, or some of the biggest lessons you've learned in your journey so far that's had a profound effect on you?
Yeah, unfortunately, one of them is going to be negative, is that actually you can't trust everyone. People say, oh, travel opens up your mind to really trusting everyone, but no, I don't. Like, an example could be, not to generalize, but if you're backpacking in India, for example, and someone says to you, or they'll meet you there at 5 o'clock, and you'll do something together. They won't meet you there at 5 o'clock, So a lot of things that people say they do, that they don't. So I think one thing I tend to do now is I try to, in the last 4 years, definitely, I judge people very quickly. So either I'm interested in that person or I'm not. And maybe they had a bad day and I was wrong to judge them quickly, but I have to judge them on what I see. And we all make mistakes in life. So that's, yeah, I guess we have to learn that life's not going to be easy for anyone. It doesn't matter if you're a multimillionaire or a film star or, a guy that runs a pub. We're all living the same experience here of ups and downs. So I learned that. I also learned that even though you can't trust everyone, still talk to everyone. So like, even if there are 10 people in a room, okay, you may not be able to trust them all, but go and talk to them all. At least you can have a little bit of conversation with them. You never know where one instance of meeting someone will just change your life. They might know, the best island in the Pacific to visit. They might know a cool bar in the middle of, Germany that you've never been to. So each person you meet will give you a wee bit of inspiration in some way, or some quote, or something that will maybe influence your life.
And we call it with your traveling. I don't think we've touched on this. I know you mentioned the Caribbean you haven't been to. You went to Antarctica. I just went to touch on that earlier. What was that like? Obviously, it's not a settled place. I think it's a protected continent. There's some international treaty or something like that.
Yeah, of course. There were Irish people that went there as well. The explorers were mostly from Norway. We had Norway, Irish, British, United States, Canadians, Chileans, Argentinians. So it was kind of, people don't count it as a country, but of course I count it. I've got at least chapter in my book about it. So it's for me, it's country. If it's not a country, doesn't exist then. So I had to go there, and when I was there, we actually went to the British base, we went to the Polish base, and we we went to the Chilean Argentinian base, but the ice was so thick that day that we couldn't land. So there are things to do in Antarctica that would shock you. Like, so there's a bar, there's a post office, there's a museum, yeah, all of that. And yeah, we were actually, our last stop in Antarctica was at the Polish base, which I also find quite ironic because I live in Poland now, and the trip to Antarctica was like 10 years ago. And as it was our last trip on that Antarctic journey, we decided to have a beer, you know, on the land at the Polish base, because I wanted to say I'd had a beer, you know, in every continent, if you know what I mean. So we just took a beer and went there. And there is a bar, actually, there's a bar in the Ukrainian base, which we didn't go to on our trip, but we had a beer in Antarctica on the land at the Polish headquarters, and it was quite interesting to do that. So it is remote, it is wild, it's beautiful, not as cool as people think. You know, if you grew up in Iceland or Norway, I don't think you'll have a problem in Antarctica. Plus, you're wearing gloves and scarves. You know, you're not exactly freezing. So,
and how long were you there? Was it you just go to there for like a tour group, or was it just saying just jumped on a ship and says you go to Antarctica? Or
yeah, well, I wanted to actually, I just wanted to go there. So for me, it didn't matter if it's like a day or 2 days, but I was lucky because I booked a 13-day tour at the time, and it was a special offer because it was the same price as the 11-day tour. So I was really lucky. I basically had 1 day short of 2 weeks from Argentina to Antarctica and back to Argentina. So I guess 4 days of that was on the ocean, where you don't actually, you know, if you look on the map, Argentina and Antarctica, it takes at least 2 days, I think, to get from the tip of Argentina to when you actually land in Antarctica. But it was worth it, you know. So I guess I had 4 days on the ship without leaving, and then probably about 9 or 10 landings on Antarctica, where you're actually walking on different parts of Antarctica, because you don't it's different to the rest of your backpacking life. You have a stop, you walk around for a bit, and then you go back on the ship, and then you sail to another part, and you walk around a bit more and back onto the ship. So it was a different style of travel for me. It was something new and special. And of course, every place we went in Antarctica was sensational, amazing.
So we're near the end, but I was just wanting to ask, who'd be one of your biggest inspirations or influences in your life?
Yeah, it's always going to be mum or dad. So I can't choose between them because they'll go mad. But yeah, so my dad for the football. He got me into football, and he was the one that would have bought me the sticker album. And you know, I was collecting stickers. But I guess when my dad bought me a sticker album when I was 6 years old, he's not thinking that I'm going to actually visit, you know, South Korea and Iraq and Uruguay. So yeah, for that, and then my mom just for always supporting me and being more calm than me. You know, if I have the bad moments, crazy moments, parents are always there. Outside of parents, I can pick other inspirations. I always watched Michael Palin on television as a kid, and while he's not exactly the he can be a little bit posh sometimes. He's a wee bit more upmarket than I'd crave to be. But watching him, he was brilliant at his job and at you know, not the Monty Python stuff, but the travel stuff that he did. You know, he was going meeting people in China, and he gave me a lot of inspiration when I would travel. In fact, I copied him because in India, there's a place in India called Gujarat, and I only went to Gujarat because of Michael Palin. And what it is, it's a province in India where it's strictly Muslim, so it's only Islamic people there. But if you're a foreigner and you can prove that you're a Christian, you can get a permit to drink alcohol. So Michael Palin had done that, and I found it so amazing that he'd gone in and filled in all these forms, showed his passport, and they checked everything, and they'd say, oh, this guy is legally allowed to drink alcohol here because he's not a Muslim, and he's going to drink it privately, and not cause any problems, so he can have it. So when I went there, I wanted to write about it, and I wanted to get that permit in my hand to say I can have a beer here. And I did it with my friend from Brazil. We went there together, and we had that drink. It was difficult to get that permit, though. I remember it took us a long time to get it through. So yeah, Palin, big inspiration. And any Northern Ireland footballer would also be on my inspiration list. Most of them. George Best, ultimate journeyman. He did more traveling than me. And he did more drinking than me. But yeah, George, so big respect to the Belfast boy.
Jonny, so if people want to get in touch with you, or they're maybe just discovering you through this interview, how can they follow you? How can they get in touch with you?
I'm actually quite an easy guy to get in touch with and find. So the best two ways are through my website, which is don'tstopliving.net. So actually that's if I just show that, I don't know if this comes up or if you're showing that, but that's the actual logo there. So it's DSL. It's don'tstopliving.net, a lifestyle of travel. That's my main travel blog. That's been going for 13 years. But if people are more interested in the Polish stuff and the immigration and how I can, move to a new country, northernirishmaninpoland.com is also good for that. And with both of those, there's also a Facebook page. So it's Facebook is Don't Stop Living, Northern Irishman in Poland, also Facebook. And then Instagram is Jonny Don't Stop Living, JONNY. So they can contact me, and feel free to connect with me or ask any questions, related to any travel subject.
That's great. I can definitely put the links in the video description below once I get this episode edited and put up onto the YouTube channel. Jonny, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time coming on, sharing your experiences. I really enjoyed listening to your travel experiences and the journeys you took, and hopefully you'll be back on the road again very soon. And best of luck with the book. I said the book release Backpacking Centurions out on September 12th, and you can get that on. It's available to pre-order now, but it's also on Amazon.
Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure to be on the show, Jonathan, and I wish you best success with everything else, with the upcoming shows and episodes. I'll be obviously watching them, and looking forward to meeting more cool people, and hopefully meet up sometime in Belfast where the virus calms down a bit and we can actually go and live some kind of normal crazy life in the city of our our capital.
Yeah, I know the wife is looking forward to getting back over to Poland, just obviously to see family and all. And I think we had planned to go over in March, but I think got scarpered with the lockdown.
Yeah.
I think you guys were in lockdown before us, so I think by a week or something like that. But no, thank you, Jonny, and I appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, all the best, Jonathan. Cheers. And
thank you, Jonny. All the best. Thank you.